after Bola Ige was assassinated on this. Was perceived as a supporter of Governor Bisi Akande, and where tensions existed between the governor and his deputy Iola Omisore. In the months following the assassination, investigators began arresting suspects. The investigation produced a number of names connected to political networks in Osun State. By October 2002, 13 people had been formally charged with murder and conspiracy to murder, according to Human Rights Watch. But the investigation was about to become much more complicated. One of the most important names to emerge was Iola Omisore, the former deputy governor of Osun State. Omisore had been politically opposed to Ige and was associated with the political struggles surrounding Osun State. In December 2002, after losing the immunity attached to his position as deputy governor, Omisore was arrested in connection with the investigation. Omisore denied involvement, and from this point forward, the case increasingly became a battle between competing narratives. The prosecution's case did not simply revolve around one piece of evidence. Investigators examined alleged connections between the suspects, political relationships, statements made during the investigation, and accounts of what happened around the time of the murder. But the evidence itself became controversial. One particularly important episode involved lawyer Festus Keyamo and a suspect named Olugbenga Adebayo, also known as Frio in contemporary reporting. In early 2002, Adebayo reportedly made allegations implicating Omisore, but he later withdrew or changed those allegations and accused his lawyer Keyamo of influencing his statement. Keyamo denied wrongdoing. Police subsequently arrested Keyamo as the investigation took another unexpected turn. For investigators, this was a serious problem. A murder investigation depends heavily on the reliability of evidence, and when witnesses or suspects change their stories, investigators have to establish which account, if any, can be trusted. The investigation gets bigger. The list of suspects continued to expand. Contemporary reporting in 2003 said that 13 suspects had been charged in connection with Ige's murder, while other accounts described different numbers at different stages of the investigation. That difference itself tells us something about the complexity of the case. The investigation did not follow a simple path from crime scene to perpetrator. Instead, the circle of suspicion widened and narrowed as different allegations emerged. In March 2003, Nigeria's Inspector General of Police told lawmakers that 13 suspects had been charged in the Ige case and described the investigation as having made progress. But progress in an investigation is not the same thing as proof in a courtroom. That distinction would eventually become crucial. By March 2003, Omisore had been formally brought before a high court in Ibadan. The case attracted enormous public attention. Journalists followed the proceedings. Political supporters gathered around the courthouse, and the question of whether the prosecution could actually prove its case became increasingly important. In August 2003, News 24 reported that a fourth judge had been assigned to the case after 3 previous judges had withdrawn. One of the judges, Mashood Abbas, reportedly withdrew after an alleged death threat. For a case this politically sensitive, repeated changes in the judicial process were bound to raise concerns. Human Rights Watch had already highlighted the delays surrounding the prosecution, noting that more than a year passed between some arrests and the beginning of trial proceedings. The case was therefore facing two challenges at the same time. First, could investigators identify the people responsible? And second, could prosecutors produce evidence strong enough to survive a criminal trial? Those are not the same question. Another important development came when Bola Ige's son, reportedly identified a man he believed was one of the assailants during the court proceedings. Contemporary reporting said that Muyiwa identified Pade Omisore, a cousin of Iola Omisore, in court. Pade Omisore was subsequently arrested for questioning, but identification by a witness is only one part of a criminal case. The prosecution still has to establish the complete chain of evidence: who was present, what did they do, what evidence connects them to the crime, and perhaps most importantly, who actually planned the killing. Those questions proved difficult to answer. By this stage, the Bola Ige case was no longer just a criminal investigation. It had become deeply intertwined with Nigerian politics. Ige had been a major political figure, Omisore was also a major political figure, and the murder investigation was unfolding during a period of intense political competition in Osun State and across Nigeria. Human Rights Watch described the assassination against a wider backdrop of political violence in Nigeria and noted that observers had proposed different explanations for the motive. There is a difference between saying this was politically motivated and saying this particular politician ordered the killing. The first was widely suspected, the second required evidence, and that evidence had to satisfy a court. As the proceedings continued, the prosecution's case faced difficulties. Some charges were discontinued against some defendants, while the case against Omisore continued. Eventually, the court examined whether the prosecution had provided sufficient evidence to establish guilt beyond reasonable doubt. That standard is fundamental to criminal justice. A person can be suspected, a person can be arrested, a person can even stand trial, but none of those things mean that the person is legally guilty. In October 2004, Justice Atilade Oho ruled that the prosecution had failed to prove its case against Omisore beyond reasonable doubt, and he was acquitted. Contemporary and later accounts also report acquittals involving other accused persons. The result was devastating for anyone hoping that the trial would finally reveal who ordered the assassination. The courtroom had not produced a definitive answer. What did the investigation actually establish? The investigation established that Bola Ige had been assassinated. It established that multiple people were investigated and prosecuted. It established that there were serious political tensions surrounding the case. But the courts did not establish beyond reasonable doubt that any of the defendants was responsible for ordering or carrying out the assassination. The International Commission of Jurists later recorded that the proceedings ended in acquittals and that no suspect had ultimately been convicted for Ige's murder. And that brings us to the most frustrating part of the story. After years of investigation and courtroom proceedings, the central question remained: who killed Bola Ige? Was the assassination connected to political rivalry in Osun State? Was there a larger political conspiracy? Were investigators following the right leads? Were important witnesses adequately protected? Did the prosecution have enough reliable evidence? Or did the investigation become so entangled in competing political interests that the truth became increasingly difficult to establish? These questions have been raised repeatedly over the years, but a responsible documentary must distinguish between questions and conclusions. There are allegations, there are theories, there are competing accounts, but there is no court-established answer identifying the person who ultimately ordered Bola Ige's assassination. Bola Ige had spent much of his career speaking about democracy, law, and justice. After his death, the Nigerian justice system had an opportunity to demonstrate those principles. Investigators made arrests, suspects were charged, witnesses came forward, judges heard the evidence, but when the courtroom process was finally over, the country still did did not have the answer it wanted. No conviction established who ordered the assassination, and no definitive judicial finding closed the case. More than 2 decades later, the question remains one of the most enduring mysteries in Nigeria's political history. Who killed Bola Ige and why? But there was another story running alongside the investigation. The story of Nigeria itself, a young democracy, a powerful political class, a deeply divided political landscape, and a justice system struggling under the weight of one of the country's most politically sensitive murder cases. In the final chapter, we examine the aftermath, the legacy of Bola Ige, the political consequences of his death, the competing theories about the assassination, and why the case remains unresolved.